Both levels of government and LNG Canada now have an enhanced cooperation agreement to support a potential final investment decision of LNG Canada's proposed Phase 2 expansion. Premier Eby says if this project reaches this stage, it will make a material difference in Canada's GDP and the Canadian dollar. Let's now invite political analyst Michael Gagan in this conversation. Hi, Michael. Great to see you.
Great to be here.
Okay, so lots to catch up on, especially in terms of energy right now in Canada. Too many decisions. Let's try and break it down. Let's start with the major announcement today from the Prime Minister on doubling Canada's energy grid capacity by 2050. You are joining us from BC. Talk to us about what you think about this mega plan for overhauling the electricity grid.
Well, it's welcome news because Canada has been in a very stagnant position. Our economy's gone from one of the strongest in the G7 to one of the most, anemic. And so this announcement today gives a ray of sunshine, a ray of hope to those that want to see Canada stay together, right? Because if we continue to economically decline, this country sooner or later is going to fly apart. So this is much needed announcement. It lays out a path in terms of getting a pipeline built. But for both Alberta and BC, this is very welcome news because, of course, both have significant LNG projects either underway or waiting in the wings. So this is good news for the two most western provinces.
So let's talk about what you just mentioned. This announcement comes as Carney government is seeking to accelerate the development of major projects like ports, mines, liquefied natural gas export facilities. And we heard today from, the Premier as well as the Minister there, Tim Hodgson, BC and Feds are hopeful that LNG Canada will come to final investment decision at the end of this year. But there are calls from people that energy projects should be reined in. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I think those people are just not reading the room. I mean, like I say, Canada has gone from being one of the strongest countries in the G7 to one of the weakest. We've had some of the most capable and wealthiest Canadians fleeing the country, and we have, potentials for independence referendums both in Alberta and Quebec. So, and even Europe is walking away from this sort of net zero. And the other thing to keep in mind, Canada has this huge thing called the boreal forest. So the amount of carbon dioxide that Canada as a nation sucks up is far in excess of what relatively little we produce. So we are a net carbon dioxide sink for the planet, right? And anything we do beyond that, in terms of getting countries to switch from coal to natural gas, whatever we do in terms of alternative energy projects, I mean, that's just icing on the cake. The world is better off with Canada, and especially with the massive forests that we have in this country. So I think those people, I think they need to get away from this climate extremism, recognize that people have to be able to afford to feed their families. They have to be able to afford to go to work. And if we're going to arrest this shocking decline in the average Canadian standard of living, we're going to have to make energy cheap for Canadians again. I mean, now what are Canadians paying? Over $2 a liter, $2.12 and more at the pumps. And part of that's because of what's going on internationally, but part of that's also because we haven't developed the refineries, the pipelines, and other associated infrastructure, and plus the fact we've taxed the heck out of gasoline, which really hurts the working poor.
Speaking of pipelines, so we were discussing what has happened today. Come tomorrow, there is an announcement on carbon pricing, and it seems like both sides, which is the Feds and Alberta, have come to some sort of a compromise on the number. Your take on that relationship, Feds and Alberta, and the outcome of what we're seeing in terms of those discussions?
Well, the Premier of Alberta remains a politician who wants Alberta to remain in Canada. So she's doing her level best to say, come on, try and make Confederation work for Alberta, right? And despite decades of, this habit of, taking out billions from Alberta while at the same time looking down their nose from the Laurentian Heights at Alberta, the jig is up in terms of treating Albertans that way. So Ottawa has to do more to give some kind of indication to Albertans that they can continue to live and work within Confederation. Coming to a more reasonable compromise on carbon pricing is one step in that direction. But on the other hand, the United States, China, they're not doing this sort of thing anymore. Europe seems to be moving away. So, are we going to be the last persons in the room still running with this sort of carbon pricing agenda? I don't know. But certainly, what we need to do is we need to make energy, clean energy, green energy, and projects like LNG relatively affordable. We need to reduce the bureaucracy. We need to be able to make decisions in months and years, not decades.
Right.
And, the list goes on. So the challenge to Ottawa and the challenge to Victoria, which has also played a key role in blocking pipelines, is can you make Confederation work for Alberta?
Okay, we leave it at that tonight. Michael Gagan, political analyst. Appreciate your time, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.